In this hand, my opponent limped on the button, and I checked my option in the big blind. And with the combination all right made hand and weak draw, I can profitably bet heads up. And I'm just going to check fold the turn, expecting my opponent to check through a lot of the time. His stats are right here. And I'll just bet 2 pair for value on the river, folding to an unlikely raise if it were to occur. You'll note so far in this video I've stuck to the minimum buy-in here. And my reasoning for that is both of these two players, who, just based on the VPIP stat, are the loosest, were at or around $4. This player is marked as a fish, but his stats actually indicate that he might be a reg, or at least a somewhat aggressive, loose aggressive player, but not exploitably so. Whereas this player is loose aggressive, but he's just so over the top that it's not a dangerous style for me to play against. So I think that it's a little facile to simply say that you should always have, that your stack should always be at the max. I think that adjusting your stack size to conditions is an important part of winning play. And while this principle might not be so important at 5 cent, 10 cent, the whole point is to develop, to perfect your strategy at 5 cent, 10 cents. So when you're playing $5, $10, all the good habits have long since been developed at lower levels. It's also helpful to get some experience playing a short stack style of play so that you know exactly what to do when effective stack sizes are smaller because your opponent doesn't have as much money on the table. After the flop got checked around and I checked my option in the big blind, I turned the third nuts with a 9 high flush. And probably I would still fold to a raise. But I am going to value bet here. Now that my opponent's raised me on the turn. So most likely my hand is... Poker is every bit as much about managing risk as it is about maximizing reward. All too often, players succumb to viewing the world of the poker table through rose-colored glasses. They only consider the good things that can happen, but they're very ambivalent towards the bad things that can occur. And I think that it's more important, if you're going to have long-term success as a poker player, to take a more balanced view. By this point, this game has already begun to not appeal to me, despite the fact that there is a 90 VPI player on my left and this loose passive guy over here. There's 3 regs, and that is 3 too many. So at this point, I begin casting around, searching for another game, ideally one which is just fish or fish and unknown. By playing 3 or 4 levels at once, I'm able to draw on a greater pool of players. So I can look at more games and find better games by playing multiple levels. Bankroll management is, of course, an important component of any winning player's financial strategy. And the variance in Punt Limit Omaha is so sick that the traditional bankroll management strategies for Hold'em are a little inadequate. They're a little inadequate for Hold'em too, although a lot of it depends on exactly what your situation is. For a full-time professional player whose bankroll is their life roll, and especially if it's a large amount of money, then you need to have much more buy-ins, many more buy-ins for a particular level than if you're, say, a recreational player who has a job and can play even with just a few buy-ins and view it more as an entertainment expense, even if they're a serious player studying the game. So but in general, I mean, you can't just simply set some arbitrary amount of buy-ins and say that is how it works in PLO. But if you were to, then maybe 50 would be a much better number than 20. One thing I like to do is go to other tables and label the players. So if I search somebody and I see that they're only playing one table, then I'll label them as fish, because most of the time they are going to be a recreational player who I wouldn't mind being at the table with. Open limping, as this player did, is another indication. Although this exact style of play I would categorize more as tight passive than fish. And I don't really seek out tight passive players, although probably I would get some value from this guy being at my table. But the mistakes that he's going to make are just not as massive as some of the errors that other people will make, which will be more profitable to me. But I wouldn't avoid him in the same sense that I would avoid a tight aggressive or winning loose aggressive player. Pretty good kings in the big blind. And I just got to the table of this hand, so I don't really have any information on how my opponents play. But most likely I'll be raising in most of these scenarios. I do actually have 3 hands on this guy, and he chose to raise one of them. It's pretty short stacked as well. Quads, not bad. Here I've got a potentially playable hand, but I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna make a marginal open with a somewhat disconnected Broadway hand. Flop pretty good with only a 5 SPR. I'll probably get it in here. Potentially I could have folded if Harry had raised. Wow. That hand actually gives me phenomenal delight because this guy is really rude in chat. I had to block his chat, he was so rude. Another somewhat marginal button open here with a low or medium sized 3 cluster and double suited. Despite having really no outs, I think I can call getting 5-1. You see, I actually do have the requisite equity even against a set. It's amazing how powerful backdoor draws can be in Potlum and Omaha. I'm pretty tempted to defend this hand against a fairly liberal open. But I'm going to pass. Here I pick up a somewhat marginal hand on the button. I actually intended to open for pot. I misclicked. Well, I mouse clicked twice while I was clicking record. Pretty good flop, top two, and a gutty. And I don't like my sizing here. I think $1 or $1.25 is better. Fairly bad turn card. Completes a straight and a flush. I still could have the best hand. Pretty nice double-suited Broadway hand here. Opening from the cutoff, first in, four-handed. And Harry is going to be able to open the door here if he goes all in. So if he makes it 144 and the loose player, the big blind, calls, then I would 4-bet, of course. Kind of tempting to call here since I'm going to be getting most likely 7 and 2/5 to 1, but I'm not quite closing the action and my hand is phenomenally weak, so I will fold. Mediocre kings on the button. I certainly wouldn't 3-bet if this passive raiser decided to open, but I am going to attempt to isolate his limp here. Got an alright hand. I've got some flop ability, some all-in equity. And this is a very weak holding on the flop. Even against just the bet, I would have folded. One of the nice things about the 5-cent, 10-cent, and 10-cent, 25-cent limit specifically is that there's not as many rakes as when you move up to 25-cent, 50-cent, to 1-2, or of course above. And the rakes that are there tend to be worse. They're too tight, they're too passive. This extremely strong double-suited king's hand, of course, must be raised from any position and re-raised against virtually any action, unless you're against an extremely tight raiser or 3-better. And of course, this is a very pretty hand on the button. And I would call a 3-bet here if the big blind chose to raise. I'm just going to check back the flop and try to pick up some draw. This hand isn't quite as pretty as the last one, but it's still playable here in the cutoff. I have 4 cards working together, and I have 1 suit one medium size suit. And of course I'm going to continue betting after I flop very good, probably with the intention of shoving any turn, since we only have one stacked opponent ratio here. My opponent was drawing virtually dead on the flop. Pretty big hand in the small blind. Actually, this was a misclick. I wanted to make it $1. Of course, I'm going to bet this very nice flop here. Nut flush draw. Top pair. And my loose opponent could call me pretty liberally on the turn. I think both checking and betting are reasonable options in this situation. I don't really want to get raised off my draw. I've only got 7 nut outs here. And I'm getting 3 to 1. I know about 8 cards, 44 remaining, 7 to 37. A little better than 5, something to 1. I might have some hidden outs, or potentially I could have the best hand. Feel like I'm going to let this one go. Might be able to chomp with a 3. I could win some money after the flop, or after the river. Here I pick up a decent holding on the button, and I will open it, of course. Probably my loose opponent would not fold an ace at this point. He's passive, so at least passive or tricky, as we saw from the last hand where he slow played 3 queens on the flop. So I can semi-bluff him maybe with a little more impunity than I would otherwise, but there's also a not inconsiderable chance that 9s is the best hand. Perhaps he would fold something like queens if I bet. I will, of course, fold to a check raise. I'm going to open ace king here. And I might as well semi-bluff with this weak double gut shot draw. My hand is almost too good to bet with here, in that he won't fold 2 pair. And I'll bet this straight with the intention of folding to a raise. I know he likes to slow play, or at least I observed him slow play earlier. So I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that he has something like ace queen or queen 9. Mediocre kings on the button. And I am going to open this hand against 2 tight regulars. I'm in sort of a bad situation if this player raises. I'm going to choose a smallish sizing on this pretty dry board. Since The only cards that change the nuts going into their turn were that change the texture were a jack and a queen. It doesn't change the nuts. Now, I think my opponent's pretty unlikely to have a straight. Most likely he's got like an ace or ace 10 maybe. He could have a full house like ace 5. Or maybe even something like pocket aces, pocket 10s. But I'm going to try to target like an ace